It's amazing to see how far technology has come, especially with how
Oh,
quickly it's advancing. Like, it's hard to believe how much further it'll go in the future.
yeah, 3D 20 years ago was vastly different than it is today.
Hmm.
And
Which
I
just
work with
makes
guys. I work with guys that started 30 years ago, and man, like it's so different now.
it just makes you wonder what 3D 20 years from now is gonna look like.
VR.
Procedural everything.
Yes.
It probably will go procedural. It's almost going to have to because the level and the amount of stuff that's going to need to be produced to fill virtual reality worlds. Like anyone building the Oasis right now is facing that reality that in order to build stuff you got to go procedural because you're going to need to iterate everything.
Yeah.
It's going to have to. I mean, you're creating worlds.
If you've modeled something like, even if it's just a building or like a facade for a building, once you've done three, you're kind of out of ideas for coming up with new ones. So it's just like make a system that will generate all of them, and
Yep.
then you just click a button and it goes. The hard
Yeah.
work's just making the system then, I guess. But
Curtis
Reminds
has.
me of this. That reminds me of this meme I saw where they were like, okay, we can either make this code once, or we can make an entire system to do this for us and only use it once.
Exactly.
That's funny.
And that's where I think everything nodes is going to really come in with Blender. The only software that does it really well right now, Houdini, is just it's if Blender develops in that direction, it's going to be very, 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 very powerful.
Hmm.
Very powerful.
How much into this simulation do you think it'll be before we can do that? Like feasibly.
I'm sorry?
Can you say that again? Sorry.
How much further into this simulation that we're in right now do you think we'll need to get before we can?
I didn't get the end of that though. Before what? I'm sorry, the audio quality is really bad.
Before we create the Oasis.
Oh.
Before we go one more level into the simulation.
Yeah, it's anyone's guess, man. I think we have a lot of political turmoil and things to address before we start really breaking that ground. But I think it's coming.
Imagine if like the whole VR industry just crashed because like no one cared, no one decided to pay, buy anything.
Speaking of VR, have you guys played Alyx?
Not yet.
I love that game. It's one of the greatest VR games I've ever played.
I cannot believe what they've done with that. I've seen no other game come anywhere close to it. The visuals are amazing. The controls are amazing. I've already started working at the mechanics. It's now made me want to just dump the short film that I'm currently working on and jump straight back into Unreal Engine 4 and just start smashing something out again. Oh,
Is that Half-Life?
Alyx?
Yeah, Half-Life Alyx.
Alyx is the only VR game where a couple times I forgot I was in VR. Like, that's how immersive it is.
Yeah, the Half-Life universe was immersive. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I really like because Valve, each of their Half-Life games they've released has been to propel some industry forward, and I think that's sort of why they've been waiting to do another Half-Life game. Because they didn't. A lot of people were salty about Half-Life Alyx being a VR exclusive game, but they didn't really make it a VR game because they thought VR was taking off. They made it a VR game so they could help VR take off.
Mm.
And the number of Oculus users tripled the day Alyx was released, which is just
Half-Life
crazy.
Half-Life has such a multi-generational built-in audience already. I loved those games. Man, it's so good. I don't have a VR headset yet, but I want to. I got to jump in at some point, but I haven't gotten excited. I don't want my kids getting addicted to it right now. They'll put it on and never take it off. People
can say what they want about Valve, but Valve has always sort of maintained the fact that if they're not trying something new, then they're not really interested in it. They don't just make games for the sake of making games. They make games because they experiment more than anything else. Really, they're basically just one big game development R&D company. That's what they are.
They are. I mean, Team Fortress and Portal both just pushed everything. It was awesome. They're really good.
Portal
the games for Linux as well.
Yeah, Portal's awesome.
Portal 1 and 2, those are probably some of my favorite games of all time.
Yeah, it's phenomenal puzzle solving. I mean, just incredible, man. But I think it's coming. I do. I think it's definitely on the cusp. It's just, there's a lot to bang out and a lot to hash out before we go full on VR, but it's going to happen. I just think, right now we're probably facing with all the, like Coca-Cola decided to not spend any ad revenue on social media, and I think we're about to feel a little hit here coming, but it's rocky, but it's VR is happening, so the simulation is coming.
Because I mean, my day job, is actually we create training VR applications. So the one thing, our probably most important thing that we've created is customer aggression. And that's for frontline staff dealing with an aggressive customer and kind of desensitizing them to that initial response. Because when you're in VR, and especially filming with the 360 camera, but hopefully we'll move into animated characters, is that when the person kind of gets up, which is me, I'm acting in it, when I kind of stand up and get right up into the camera, it's kind of that shock value, like, whoa, this guy is now in my personal space. The training, like real life training, is expensive. That we've made it. Here's an Oculus Quest, and then we can just ship it around the country and people can just like experience it. So
a really cool video about VR. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I'll send it to the Discord for you guys to watch later. But yeah, I think VR is definitely going to be huge in the future. Like, it's already grown quite a bit.
Have you guys Price posted? There's this camera rig that like captures depth in some like new novel way. So it's kind of like, actually, I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm abandoning it.
There was a company a few years back called Lightro or something like that, and they had a special lens which would capture a multi-directional. I think it had a lens a bit like a fly's eye or something. I don't know how it worked, but afterwards you could post focus, which was phenomenal, and it had a bit of that parallax shifting as well, because it was taking the photo. Essentially, the lens wasn't just one lens; it was like 500 lenses.
I saw that. Yeah.
Interesting.
I remember that.
And that's been around for maybe 5 or 6, maybe even a decade. And then about 2 or 3 years ago, they released a smaller thing. I think they were trying to kickstart it or something like that. And it's phenomenal technology, but it was expensive technology. I think you got maybe 1 or 2 megapixels because, of course, the sensor was capturing so many different images. The resolution was so low.
What I've seen now is they're actually able to use like neural networks and machine learning to generate depth maps from just images. So you can just give it any photo and it's like, okay, make a depth map, because there's a lot of stuff you can do with neural networks too. Like I've been looking at
AI is going to really take off. I mean, optics is AI based. So what's around the corner that we can accelerate or use computers to guess?
Yeah, because like the way it works is, I mean, this is sort of like more a very like simplified version, but you give it an input and you give it a desired output, and it'll try to figure out how to make this input look like that output. And you train it with all these different inputs and outputs, and eventually you can just give it any input and it'll be able to make it look like that output. And the applications to this are like infinite. You can do so much with it. Like denoising, or they've made AI that lets you it interpolates frames between videos so you can increase the frame rate.
Or increase the resolution
so much you can do
as well.
Have you all played around with, I think it's PIFU HD, PIFU HD. It's a new research by Facebook's AI lab that essentially generates a 3D model or a 3D object from a 2D image.
I've bookmarked it. I bookmarked the GitHub, and they also have a Jupyter notebook available, I think, for you to experiment.
And the Google Colab as well.
Yeah.
So it's wild. I've used it now a couple times to do some testing, and it's just a wild way to work, to be able to take a photo and then plug it into something and then have your 3D object moments later.
Yeah, does look really cool. If you want a 3D model of yourself, just take a picture, and there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.